beautiful thing about logistics is not only is there thousands of different companies out there, but each one is structured a little differently, right? Obviously, there's overlapping similarities, but there's a very, very kind of personal touch to how freight brokerages and the transportation industry as a whole are run. And the other thing I would say is there are so many people that in your lives that you don't know are in some way, shape, or form involved in transportation, in logistics. It is such an encompassing industry, right? You're either working at a shipper where you're involved in the freight, or you got a cousin or cover every end of the spectrum that you know somebody, and that's going to help you in your career. It's all about who you know, not what you know.
Welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Digital Industrial Revolution. Today, we have an exciting guest who has navigated a fascinating career path from football field to the fast-paced world of transportation and logistics. With over 8 years of industry experience, he's currently at the helm of Chariot Logistics as the Chief Revenue Officer, where he drives the company's revenue and customer retention strategies. His journey from NCAA football coach to a top executive is a testament to his leadership, strategic thinking, and relentless commitment to excellence. Join us as you dive into the world of business development, strategy, and innovation with none other than Alex Schnitzer. Welcome to the show, Alex, and thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Arvid, thank you for that introduction. Appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you guys today.
Fantastic. Well, you've had a fascinating career trajectory from NCAA football coach to dynamic leader in logistics industry. First question for my audience would be, what motivated you to transition into this specific field? And what intrigues you about, what intrigues you the most about the transportation and logistics industry?
So, yeah, my transition from working in college football to logistics was very much a classic, not what you know, who you know type of situation. One of the childhood friends that I grew up with had come over as a partner to Chariot, and we talked all the time. So he knew that I was kind of looking for my next opportunity to football. I thought I was going to grow up and be a football coach my whole life. And it's just, kind of like any industry, right? When you're at the smaller level, it's just tougher. Football, you work a lot of hours. It's a great profession, but during the season you work 100 hours a week and don't have a day off. And then if you make the playoffs and all that stuff. So I was just looking for more of a family centric type of career or industry, but also something where a strong work ethic is compensated, right? And a huge benefit, which obviously in logistics it is. So it's probably the only job I could do that's not coaching ball, because it's technically a desk job, but not really. It's problem solving. There's so many different things going on a daily basis. No days, back-to-back days are ever the same. A lot of situations. That's a great thing about sports, right? It's very situational based. You're always put in different situations to figure out, and logistics is very much the same thing.
I would agree with you.
Yeah. There's such a parallel between sports and business, and it's just was pretty natural
totally
transition.
What I learned from a lot is poker. I think a lot of lessons about life, about even running a business. I think poker played an important role. And of course, there may be a lot of luck involved, but it's still like thinking and game theory and, every hand. And in the long run, if you play well, you win. I mean, funny story, in order to start this company, the first $100,000 of funding came from Macau. Can you believe that?
Really?
That's where I won in poker, and that's how I bought. They used to have Mac Minis, or good ones back then. That's what we started our development on, and I bought a bunch of those, and that was the money that I got to afford those and put out a team. So I love it. And right place at the right time, and of course very challenging. And it's not as such a desk job. You do a lot of stuff on the desk, being digital, but of course you sometimes have to get out there and know and talk to the people, operations, and drivers, and customers, and all of that good stuff. Well, can you tell us more about Chariot Logistics and the key services that it provides, so we can get a context of what might be, your day, and what sets Chariot Logistics apart from other companies? Are there any unique strategies and technologies that you employ that give you a competitive edge?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, Chariot Logistics is a 3PL full service freight brokerage. We've been around for a little over 12 years, which, in a lot of other industries, 12 years, like, okay, that's good. What's next? But in the freight brokerage world, it's like a grandfather, right? There's a lot of companies that are substantially younger. One of our biggest differentiation factors is that we have always been and are still a very financially strong company, and we're privately owned. Joe DeLeo, our founder and CEO, was a one-man shop, built the company the right way, was one-man shop for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, somewhere in between there. And everything that we do is very organically grown. I know, but saying you're an organically grown company is the cool thing to say these days, but that's always been Chariot. We've never taken any outside capital or any VC money or anything like that. Kind of the sales pitch that we say to our customers is we want to run a very customer-centric business, and we don't want some gentleman or lady on, up in New York telling us how to work or how to run a logistics company that's never spent a day in logistics, but telling us what decisions to make because they want to see 0.02 more in column X. So, we offer over-the-road truckload transportation solutions for shippers of all sizes. We have specialties in food and beverage, health and beauty care, retail, and packaging materials are our four biggest verticals that customer verticals that we service.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, yes. I mean, I feel like sometimes I like to say it's the backbone industry. Like, it is what supports so many different industries. But tell me about some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about logistics and transportation industry, and how do you address them?
Great question. First and foremost, the pandemic has made everybody an expert in transportation, right? Like we were the back page, pre-pandemic transportation in supply chain was the afterthought, right? But when you couldn't have your goods that you wanted to get because of the pandemic, everybody became an expert, right? I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, interchanging the three words logistics, transportation, and supply chain. Like everybody kind of thinks it's all one thing, that aren't in the business, but they are all three completely separate things. Somebody that works in supply chain at a Fortune 500 shipper doesn't do anything with the transportation of the day-to-day moves, and even logistics and transportation is different. The other misconception is that it's easy. All you're doing is picking a truck and going. There's obviously a lot of different things that go into it. And, freight brokers exist for two main reasons why freight brokers came in back in the day, right? It was assume liability and carrier vetting, right? Making sure you're picking the right carriers, but then to unite the capacity. Because for a big shipper, right, they've got very extensive contracts, and the setup process is a very, very grueling process, and they're not going to go through that for a company that has one truck, two trucks, five trucks, right? But then if you look at the statistics, 95% of the trucking companies on the road are less than 10 units, right? So because of those two things that you said, that's where the freight broker comes in, is to make it easier for the shippers to access that said capacity, and then assume some of the liability. And the third thing is problem solve, right? Problems arise in transportation. That's a big coaching point for our staff every day when, they're frustrated dealing with problems. Like, hey, you have a job because of these problems. If it was easy as picking a truck and there was no problems, every big shipper would have a call center in their facilities, and they would handle it. But problem solving is a big part of it. And that's what makes the job fun.
Absolutely. And there's, like you said, so much excitement and new challenges, but we hear so much about automation nowadays, and automation is becoming increasingly prevalent in logistics as well. What are some of the
Absolutely.
key areas where automation can significantly enhance efficiency and reduce costs?
Let's take the biggest thing is creating efficiencies on sourcing capacity and communication, right? How we communicate with our carriers. Cherry is never going to be a company that technology replaces our people, right? We are going to be a very tech forward shop. We're going to use tech any and every way we can, automation specifically, but we want our automation to enhance our people, right? To give our employees a better work experience, maybe even a better work-life balance, but then also provide a better service to our customers. But the answer to the original question is creating efficiencies in carrier sourcing and communicating with our customers, whether it's through different EDIs or different forms of communication that's already in the system, and our staff takes less steps from sending an email or making a phone call on both ends, from the shipper and to the carriers.
Totally makes sense. Create a better experience for your employees so they are happy and more productive and doing things that are meaningful instead of mundane reports that you have to just, trust you me, I've seen it a few times. And at times I look at an industry and I'm like, wow, I can't believe you're still taking screenshots of an Excel sheet that you're maintaining and sending it as a status. And believe me, these are like even some of the very large organizations that still have processes that do that. So I agree with you. And of course, for any company, creating a better customer experience, that is a long-term recipe for success. So I agree with you. I think I'll throw in another one. Like, of course, it reduces cost, and because the number of hours spent would be less. So you could, of course, have those employees work on process improvement or making that personal call. And I think it reduces anxiety as well. So they're more likely to, if they already, because I know when I have something that I order and I get an email that, oh, we have received your order. Yeah, I know it's an automatic email. I know that they haven't looked at it. There's no human, but I still feel better. So, even at least 100%. That kind of automation is so important.
The Amazon experience the Amazon experience as you're talking about is completely changed the expectation, right? The fact that a shipper, right? Because shippers are normal people, just like brokers are normal people, right? They go home, they order stuff on Amazon, and they're getting a notification of a picture on their phone, and then they're thinking, oh, wait, if Amazon can do this with a single package, well, why can't I have the similar information with the full truckloads that my staff and I are sending 17 emails every day on? Why can't we have that same automation? So the Amazon effect is, it almost started as a joke when people started saying that, but it is real, very real.
Amazon effect is real. No, I agree. And, there are other trends in the market as well. Like, of course, artificial intelligence is revolutionizing many industries. How do you see AI transforming the logistics and transportation industry in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years? That's a longer period. We can hardly predict 2 to 3 years, but what about 5 to 10 years? What do you see? Where do you see AI taking this industry? If you were to kind of step back and look at it as a thought experiment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? The AI it's something that's been around forever, but at the same time, it's come out of nowhere too, right? And it's been the buzzword of conferences, this year. But again, I just think it's another efficiency tool, right? I don't think it's a tool that's going to replace companies, right? I think companies that don't adapt AI are going to be replaced, right? But again, it's just another employee enhancement from a communication standpoint. It's an information tool, right? It's like a more efficient, more articulate, maybe Google, for lack of a better term. And obviously, there's more to it, but I think the predictive forecasting ability from using AI to help forecast scheduling and things like that, it's more replacing other forms of tech, where I think it will help transform the industry, and again, enable people to do more with less, but not even just from a volume standpoint, but from a quality standpoint as well.
I agree. Kind of similar to automation there, but I think, it's very hard for people like you and I to forecast how quickly this might go, because who could have forecasted ChatGPT, that it's going to
100%.
just come around in November 2023, and then it's going to change our lives. I mean, for
Absolutely.
22, yes. So who could have thought that this was possible? But I think that's only one piece of it, right? Like there is, of course, like you mentioned, the demand forecasting, then there's route optimization, there's price prediction as well, there's automated like sourcing and understanding the best price for sourcing as well. So, I mean, there are so many things that can be done, but it's very hard for us to imagine all the use cases and how it's going to really change the industry. I mean, that's what my opinion is. I think some of the other
Yeah.
things that touch us more, maybe more like IoT, which we already use, like in the trucks, we had a customer, Trinity, Trinsight is their product, and they send through rail, and they have temperature controlled shipments, and the customers can actually see the temperature in the shipment, and obviously, of course, track location and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
The team helps a bunch with that, and I mean, it offers substantial benefits for logistics as well as transportation industry. Um, what are some of the most promising applications in your industry that you're seeing, um, that we may not have seen so far on IoT?
Yeah, honestly, you kind of hit on a lot of that. The thing with AI is it's, yeah, I think people maybe try to pigeonhole it a little bit, right? Like the capabilities are endless, and it's been another one of these things that have kind of come out of nowhere. Where I don't know if lack of education is the best way to say it, but it's just Chat GPT came up overnight, and half the world had the app, but really didn't know what it did, and then all the levels. But one of the biggest problems with the AI is fraud and double brokering is a huge issue in our industry. It's probably the number one issue, and AI doesn't necessarily do anything to prevent it, and maybe even enhances that. So I think that's got a lot of people in the industry scared, or hey, head more hesitant, especially on the freight brokerage side from an AI standpoint, because it can enhance the fraud application, right? Because you can predict people's voices, you can impersonate stuff very easily. So I would love, very interested in seeing how the next step from AI to prevent that aspect, or even do some stuff to prevent fraud and double brokering as a whole.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Of course, you don't want that misinformation, and we've created a product in Gen AI where you could just put some text and it creates a video. And of course, it also has the ability to clone your voice. So you could literally go right now and clone your voice, and all I need is just a 10-second clip, from you. So you're right that it opens up so many of these doors, AI does. But I also feel like AI helps in fraud prevention, because AI could look at different parameters and those anomalies, and highlight areas where we're going to anticipate more in fraud. But I mean, I guess beyond AI and IoT, which I guess it's the generic stuff in IoT as well, what are some of the other emerging technologies that you believe would have the most significant impact in this industry in the near future? Like, are there other technological things? Like, you talked about automation, you talked about AI and IoT I mentioned, but what are some other things that you may be excited about that, oh man, if you could just do this, this is going to be like next level?
Absolutely. Tracking is a huge thing in logistics, right? Tracking the trucks from A to B, or throughout the whole route. But everybody is either tracking the truck or the driver, which the freight doesn't have to 100% be connected to the driver's phone or to that truck. So I think and there's companies that have started to figure out, different things that you can put in the trailer, but it's a physical thing. So where's it going to go to the next stop? How do I get it back to the origin? The companies that can figure out how to track the actual freight economically, because again, there's options out there, but it's highly expensive. But you feel like you can do anything with a QR code and stuff like that. But the company that can figure out how to put a chip or whether it's a specific kind of pallet or something like that. But again, it's a cost thing. That stuff is very costly. That's why the app
it can be reused. Yeah,
for sure. But then it's another logistical thing, right? Because that's a big
true.
From a lot.
Hey, did you drop the air tag in the package or not? Yeah,
100%. And air tag's a great example because that's something that's smaller and can maybe be done a little cheaper and not. I don't want to say disposable because environmental is a big thing as well. But the traveling's a big aspect. But again, the fuel efficiency going in the environmental, that's technically not a tech thing, but it kind of is. That's a big problem that needs to be solved too from an environmental standpoint, and using alternative fuels, not even just batteries and stuff. Because again, there's another complication.
I love that
as well.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, which is important. We talk about it in every podcast, is on sustainability. Sustainability is a hot topic in all industries, and of course, in generally, like any kind of business. How is the logistics sector adapting to the growing demand for sustainable practices?
Right. So the biggest thing, and it's kind of a parlay into your previous question, is what more tech do you want to see or enhancements, and it's efficiencies of continuing to route optimization and eliminate wasted time of deadhead miles and idle time for drivers, right? Like it's 2024. There's a ton of tech out there, right? There's drivers. We should be running much more efficient to where drivers aren't running empty in between loads 40, 50 miles each time, right? That's a lot of wasted energy, obviously, a lot of wasted fuel, all that kind of stuff. So that's the problem. Obviously, it's getting a lot better. It's something that at Chariot we put a huge emphasis on, as far as how reusing the same truck, right? We've got a lot of shippers in our network that buy and sell from each other, and that's been kind of by design. So every single day we have some of our drivers that are getting a reload at the exact same facility that they're delivering at. And that seems like a small thing, but not only is that more efficient for the driver's time, utilizing his or her clock more, but it's also eliminating the deadhead miles, and limiting, the extra pollution, right? Because if the driver's going to get his miles every day anyway with loaded miles, because most drivers only get paid when they're under a load. So those miles are going to be driven anyway. The deadhead is just extra miles and extra pollution. So that's a big, big thing. And that's even if we're just using the same type of fuel. Then when you get into all the different alternative fuels, batteries, all that stuff, then it just takes it up a whole nother notch.
No, I agree with you. And I sense that practicality in your, suggestions and voice. How far are we from the, Tesla-like trucks that are fully autonomous, and then we don't need anybody. You just, program in the app and boom, boom, and the truck shows up and has robots that are picking everything, and, boom, you're good.
So I think that's a very loaded question, right? I think because there's levels to it where it's being used now, right? I think where
true,
from a percentage standpoint, the majority of the trucks on the road are autonomous. My answer is not going to be the most popular. I think it's not in our lifetime, period. But
wow,
I think what's going to
not even 10 years.
Not where you have over 50% of the tractor trailers on the road for long haul stuff. Now, on the flip side, I think what the smarter companies are going to do, the more innovative companies, from a shipper standpoint, are they're in the rural areas, right, where they've got manufacturing plant, and then 5 miles down the road they've got a DC that stores product. Like I think a lot of those situations, where you got some in West Tennessee, some plants that are doing things where they're already using 100% autonomous vehicles and they're just doing routes at night. And it's on a back road that's a straight shot and things like that. I think that's the niche. If I'm a shipper, that's where I'm looking for the autonomous vehicles, right? Because I need to cut that out, or I can cut out immediately some environmental issues, but I'm maximizing the time, maximizing, tax breaks as well. That's a big thing for some of the companies. But again, I think people oftentimes just try to look at tech to solve every problem, right? Let's just solve one or two problems. Let's get a benefit of our network some way, somehow, and not just necessarily replace it all. Because
no, that's a great advice.
Yeah,
because that's what we say. Some companies want to do digital transformation and they're like, oh yeah, we could do this, we could do that. I'm like, no, look at just a couple of problems that you can have an impact, so you gain that momentum instead of just trying to boil the ocean. Make one process automated or efficient, or try a pilot. So super important.
Absolutely.
I agree with you there, Alex. Yeah. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who want to make a mark in the logistics and transportation sector?
Buckle up. Buckle up, get ready. No, it's a great industry. The thing about it is it's always going to be around, right? It's not a flavor of the day. It's not something that the pandemic made cool or created. It's something the pandemic made cool, right? It just put more visibility on it. And it's a very sustainable industry. It's going to look different at some point. I could be wrong. There may be autonomous vehicles, but again, at the end of the day, as a broker, it doesn't matter what the truck runs on, right? If it's just a battery, if it's an autonomous driver, if it's a specialized fuel or alternative fuel, or if it's diesel, I have to contract the truck for a specific load. So that job as a freight broker is always going to be around. And be open to learning is the biggest thing I would say. Don't pigeonhole yourself with one, hey, I want to be straight in operations, or I want to be straight on a specific role. That's the beautiful thing about logistics, is not only is there thousands of different companies out there, but each one is structured a little differently, right? Obviously there's overlapping similarities, but there's a very, very kind of personal touch to how freight brokerages and the transportation industry as a whole are run. And the other thing I would say, especially if somebody's still in college or a few years away, is network, right? There is so many people that in your lives that you don't know are in some way, shape, or form involved in transportation, in logistics. It is such an encompassing industry, right? You're either working at a shipper where you're involved in the freight, or you got a cousin or cover every end of the spectrum that somebody, and that's going to help you in your career. It's all about who you know, not what you know.
Love that. Well, great advice for the aspiring entrepreneurs. And that wraps up today's episode of Decoding the Digital Industrial Revolution. We've seen how navigating the logistics industry is much like playing games. In some ways, yes, you heard the example from Alex. I think a lot of similarities, and you need a solid game plan and a strong team and agility to adapt on the fly. Well, Alex Schnitzer has shown us the power of leadership, strategy, and innovation in driving success. So whether you're steering your logistics company to new heights, or launching a fresh entrepreneurial venture, keep aiming for excellence and pushing the boundaries. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep your supply chains tight and your business strategies even tighter. Stay curious, stay driven, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.